Hey everyone, this is Bootstacker Volume 1. This is just the first video where we'll actually dive into some code and talk about learning how to learn. I've had so many people ask me over the years, how did you learn to code? How did you teach yourself? What should I do? What resources should I be looking for? Should I do a boot camp? Should I do a online code school? Should I do Lambda school? Should I do income share? It's really information overload when it comes to coding, and I don't think there's necessarily a wrong way. I have a way that worked for me, and I think I can give you a way that works that's even better than the way that worked for me. I'd like to give you some shortcuts, and this is going to be a much cheaper way to learn. You could learn for basically free. It's also going to be a faster way to learn. You're not going to be stuck waiting around for somebody else's timeline or a curriculum. So I've got the Substack here. So if you're curious to read more about the background, why I'm starting this, kind of my background, why I'm interested in this, where I'm coming from, why it matters, check out the Bootstacker Substack. Let's jump into homework from last week. Well, this was from today. So last week, I talked about learning with a project in mind. And it's really, really important that you have something you're excited to build. So to learn like this, you really need to think about what's going to motivate you to learn. A lot of people say, I want to go learn to code. I want to learn how to write JavaScript, or I want to be a Python programmer. You aren't going to be able to do that unless you're just, if you had the motivation to do that, you would already be doing that. You probably wouldn't be interested in watching a video like this. So this video isn't for those people that are self-motivated to go read a book about Python or do a intense curriculum. This is for people who have tried those and it didn't work, or for people who have zero experience and don't know where to begin. I don't have anything against that. I just don't think that type of motivation works for most people. I think you need to find something that you're interested in building, and I think you need to view code as a tool to get you there. So my whole thesis is that code is a means to an end. If you happen to learn enough of it and like it as you're building this thing, it may not be a means to an end. It may be a new career path for you. And you may already know that you want to write code. You want to be creative. You want to write software. All of this that we're doing, it's going to be good for preparing you to move in that direction. So let's jump in. Let's talk about the project. It needs to be something you're excited about. Today I shared a quick post, and there are a few small caveats that I wanted to point out. As you're selecting a project, I realized last week I didn't mention that you don't want something that's going to be insanely complex. So if you want some kind of AI pizza delivery machine or a toaster or something, IoT device, let's skip out on that for now. You don't want to make it too complicated. And then once you have your project idea, I don't want you to fall into this trap of the pre-optimizing a domain name or a brand name and logos. Once you get a good idea, it's really easy to fall into that. Don't waste time doing that right now. Let's just focus on building something as fast as we can to achieve our end goal. We can circle back on names if what you create actually works. And back to this idea of something, don't make it too complex. Right now, if you've got zero coding experience, I think the best thing you can do is create something that's on the web. That's not to say you're creating anything inferior. As a full stack web engineer, you can make $150,000 a year. It's definitely not an inferior place to start. So if anything, it's worth starting somewhere like the web because it's accessible and it's pretty easy to get the hang of it, and you can play around. It's really easy to get experience. I'll show you that toward the end here. So if you've got very little to maybe no technical experience, I'd suggest a very simple website, something like a informational website or recipe website. If you have a diet or something that you like, you could create a website for that. And then if you are more technical, you maybe know a little bit of code or have started and then like gave up, or just are more ambitious and willing to put more time into it. A web application is it's still a web application is still a website, but there's just more advanced things that you're going to be able to do. It's kind of a blurry line, but I'll distinguish that a bit more later. So, let's start talking about our project here. And as we do that, I wanted to share a little bit about the project that I'm doing. So today I mentioned that I am building a project alongside everybody. I think this is really helpful for anyone who's just starting out to see what it looks like to go from scratch to something that's actually out there in the wild, and that maybe it's something people would pay for. So I didn't have time to formulate the best idea, but it's something that I'm currently looking for, and there wasn't one. So the cool thing about learning to code is you can be the person to build that. Even if it doesn't make any money, if you're interested in that thing, you'll be motivated to build it. So I recently started the keto diet, and I don't know if anybody else has gone down that route, but it's kind of a strange diet, and I wanted to learn more about people who were logging certain fitness things about keto. And I've noticed this in the past as I've done other workouts or tried different nutritional supplements. There are a million websites out there with before and after pictures, a million forums where people are trying all kinds of things. This guy's bulking with barbecue. I don't even know what that means, but he's got a long 5 thread log on this. There are a lot more. There's a lot more out here. There we go. So this dude starting a training log. So you get the idea, right? There are a ton of these out there. Yeah, and here's another one. Muscleandstrength.com. There are literally a million of these things. And what people do is they log it, and it's a very crude way to log information. So I would love to have a way to just share my log as a single page. It's kind of like the one-page websites people have. I'm sure you've seen that. There's one called Cards. There are a few options for that. So anyway, and also my company, Wave, we have something called Wave Link, which is a page for podcasters, a simple website page for podcasters to use. So to me, it makes sense that you should have a single page to track your fitness regime, your diet, and you can share it with the world if you so choose. So anyway, it's not something I validated against the market, but it's something I'm interested in. So that checks the box for motivation, and that is what I'm going to build. So now let's talk about building. First off, we're building a website, or a web application in this case. So let's think about that. What is the first step to doing this? And just a little disclaimer here. I want you to just bear with me, because a lot of the talking I'm doing is really trying to slow my brain down and explain the series of questions that our brains naturally ask. It may seem super obvious as I'm articulating this stream of thought out loud, but what I'm trying to really demonstrate here is that our brains are very curious, and they're really good at finding answers. Google and the internet is amazing for that. The trouble is staying focused and not getting, and following the correct thread, and not getting bogged down in other areas that we don't know. So if you're somebody who's got no coding experience and you're just starting out and you really want to build something, there are a million different things that you don't know that could distract you. I want to help you get past that, and that's a lot of what this course is letting you know, or leading you along the way to learn what you need to learn without all the excess. And you can always come back and learn that. You probably should later if you actually want to make a career out of writing code. So, first question. Well, let's think about our goal. So my goal is to create a web app for fitness enthusiasts to share their progress and maybe goals and things like that. So I'm basically just creating a website. if I'm starting from scratch, maybe my first question here is, okay, like what actually is a website? Like I know what it is when I see it, but how do you, like, what are the things that make up a website? So what I would do is I would just Google, like, what is a website? And one of the first hits I had was a pretty good one. This is a UVA Physics Computer Facilities EDU site. And this diagram is perfect. It's exactly what I'm looking for. So we asked the question, you know, what is a website? And this gave us an answer. You've got a computer here, which is basically your web browser. They've got the Firefox icon. Right now I'm using Google Chrome, so that could be alternated in. We've got a server here. And if you were to read the text, it would explain, you know, server, we've got a browser, and we've got all these files here. It says .html. So we've got some information now, and our brain is going to take this information, and it doesn't know much if you're starting from scratch. We may be familiar with what a browser is. We may have heard about a server before, and we've heard about writing code or files. So, like, how do we stay focused and not lose the thread by getting distracted? We could spend ages and try to dive down into this hole of, like, what is a server? But if you think about it and use some common sense, the server part doesn't seem like coding, right? It doesn't seem like the meat of what we're going after here. We're not in the business of building a server right now. We're also not in the business of building a browser right now. These are the tools that we already have. Google and Firefox or Mozilla and Safari already have made browsers. We're not working on improving a browser. We're working on files, right? I think that's the logical train of thought if you look at this source of information and you chase it down. So that was just the very first question. Sorry, it's taken a while to kind of walk through this, but I really want to be careful and help you learn how to learn and ensure that you're using some common sense and focusing on not losing the thread. Pay attention to the end goal and focusing on what you need to get there. So we now know that this is the makeup of a website, and our hunch is that we're going to be working on files. So what goes in these files that would make a web app or a website? Well, we could just Google that. I was trying to find a funny GIF that demonstrates this whole thing. Yeah, so if you've seen Zoolander, the files are in the computer. Like, a lot of people, my in-laws message me all the time and are asking, like, help us with our printer, help us with our computer. I think a lot of people understand that files are in a server, they're in a computer, right? But, like, what are those actually made up of? So let's take a look. We're going to Google that and say, what files make up a website? That was the first thing that came to mind. You may have entered a different query, and sure enough, the first result is a pretty good one. It's from Mozilla. They're the ones that create the Firefox browser. So let's click in here and take a look around. I will caution you that Mozilla, they can be pretty text heavy, but it's really, really well done information. So if you're a beginner, it may seem a little dense, but this is a great, like, just scanning it here, this is a great article for explaining a website, and boom, this is exactly what we're looking for. So the structure of a website, you've got a file called index.html. We've got an images folder that can contain images, and maybe a styles folder, and maybe a scripts folder. So, okay, all right, so we know now that a website has to have a certain structure, and there are certain files and folders that can be grouped together and make the website. So, cool. All right, so now let's think next step. We've gone all the way from what is a website to understanding that we've got a server and we've got a browser and we've got files, to understanding that, hey, the files are important here. What exactly goes in those files? And now we realize that there's some HTML and images and styles and scripts. So now let's talk about HTML. I think that's a good place to start, and probably the first question you'd ask yourself: what exactly is HTML? right now I'm going to show you something really cool. Something that some of you might be aware of, but most of you probably have no idea. Any web browser is going to allow you to do something called view source. So if I went to, I'm in Chrome here on my Mac, go to view, I can actually go down here and I can scroll down to developer and I can view the source code of the website, which is the actual raw HTML. Boom. So now it's opened a new tab and this is all HTML. I'm scrolling down quickly because it's a lot of stuff, but you can clearly see, I mean, this is English language. It's not, you know, rocket science going on in here. And you can also see like, oh, like these look like links. Yeah, so the cool thing about the web is you can learn a lot just from being curious. Another nice trick with both Chrome and Mozilla is you can right click and you can choose to inspect an element. So if we went back to this like Zoolander clip I had, I can right click this and I can choose to inspect. And you'll notice that this thing has opened up. And this looks like the image is highlighted. So I can kind of like move my cursor around and it highlights different things on the page. If I went to Google, all right, so if I go to Google here, this little bar is still up and you can see how it highlights each of these assets. So if I inspect the button, cool. And you know what I can also do? I can look at my delete key and I can decide to tap that delete key and boom, I just deleted Google's button. And I can delete this one. And I can delete the image. Or I could replace the image and change it to something else. So this is a really powerful way for learning. You can learn by just experimenting. You can say, okay, like this HTML piece or what's known as an element uses something called img, image, and then there's, you know, other items like a center one, which seems self-explanatory. So you're actually learning HTML as you're just kind of exploring this. We could also go click another link, and there's other cool stuff you can do with these developer tools. And I will send some, or in this video, I'll include some links with where to go to learn more about using the developer tools. That's what this is called, is Chrome developer tools. But you could even go in here and I could change the color. Let's say I want to change this text to red. Boom, change the text to red. Now, I've done this for people before and they've kind of freaked out, like, oh, are you hacking Google? Like, what are you're changing Google's website? All you have to do is refresh it and it goes back to black. And if I were to go back to google.com, and it's all back. So this demonstrates something that's pretty important in like this course or this lesson, and it's this separation between files that are on a server and files that you have locally. This is something that you could continue to follow our chain of questions and researching and learning, and eventually you would realize this, but I'm just going to help you out at certain points here when we're not just learning for the sake of learning how to learn. If we look at this diagram here, this computer is Google's computer and it has all these files. So when we go to the Google site, we have a URL we type in, and that has a computer behind it, and that computer has access to these files, and it's sending us those files, and then the browser downloads them. So those files were not on Google's computer anymore. The files I was viewing were actually the files that have been downloaded to my machine. That's why in the days of dial-up, it took forever to actually load stuff, is because you're downloading all the content. So yeah, that's a quick, short explainer in how websites work, just as a high-level view, and how some of those files are structured. One more thing I want to do right now is actually look at some real code and show you what it's like to look at this code locally and maybe how you would work on a project. To do that, I've got to share something that's pretty embarrassing, but also kind of cute and funny. So let's share this one first. So when I was in 5th or 6th grade, my school did like one of these like early web education courses, and I came across this on an old floppy disk a while back. I found the actual source code for this site I made when I was a kid, and it's a really great example because it was such like a simplified version. It's pretty much all GIFs and like image GIFs and then 5 HTML files. And you can really easily see here that as I navigate through the menu, oh wow, yeah, I had great design prowess. You can see, oh look, the URL changed to menu.html. That must be this file. And then I click on this one, it says family. That must be this one. And I could do something really cool here, like edit the file. So since these are files I have locally, meaning like they're files on my actual computer, I could change this to say, I don't know, born in Dallas, Texas. And then if I refresh this page, look, Albert Einstein was born in Dallas, Texas. So anyway, really simplified HTML. And that's all a website has to be. I mean, you can have a website that's literally just, oh, you know what? I'll show you I have a company website, and it's probably the simplest website you've ever seen. And it's literally just this. It's about just a few elements, and when you're thinking about a website, like, it's really not a lot going on here. So yeah, I mean, this is it. Just a tiny amount of stuff going on. So yeah, a website doesn't have to be much. It's made up of HTML and images. It can also have video, as you've seen, and then there are styling elements and things like that can come into play here. So yeah, as we think more about our projects, I wanted to share some resources and links for getting started. I hope this was just a quick crash course in kind of helping you think through this process of teaching yourself code. The key is really going to be not losing the thread or not losing sight of the goal in mind, and trying to avoid getting distracted by what you don't know. That can be incredibly overwhelming when you're starting out, and it's the reason a lot of people give up. It's because it seems like there's an insurmountable amount of knowledge. I think that you have to approach this like a baby enters the world, where you are just trying to survive. You're just trying to understand enough to reach your goal. I think that's how our brains were designed, just to get through to the next day, just to survive. And I want you to approach this course like that, or your project like that you're learning the bare minimum, basically, that you need to get to the next step. So if you need to learn how to do a certain page in HTML, I'm going to show you how you could definitely start from scratch, but that's going to take forever. I'm going to show you how to copy and, I hate to say steal, but with open source code, it's not really stealing. You're looking at somebody else's code. It's open source, so that means you can use it. If you were to start from scratch and all this, like, a lot of people would lose motivation. So I don't want to do that. So jumping on over, let's talk about some projects and areas to get inspiration from, and also like where you could possibly borrow code from. So here we go. This is a really cool tool called CodePen, and CodePen it's kind of like a second ago when I showed you how I could edit these files here locally and then render them in my browser. CodePen just does that for you. So I don't even have to work off of my computer. I could create something just using a little project template in CodePen, and it'll show it to me. And there's a really cool example I want to show you. This guy, he created 100 different projects in 100 days. And I don't know how he did that, but it's pretty impressive. And he's got pretty good design talent, so it's also like a good example of what's possible. But I really think this is inspiring as you guys are considering projects and thinking about what kind of website or web application could you potentially build. This is a great resource because you can look at it and you can borrow some of the code. And in a future, maybe next week's episode, I will show you how you can fork something in CodePen. Forking is the process of copying something and making it your own in like the proper way. But yeah, like if we were to just jump into any of these, he's created like a Pokedex, which is a pretty cool little display here, where whatever this is just like loading in stuff from a remote Pokemon server, it looks like. And if we look at other stuff, he's got which one's your favorite. So it's like a voting app for your dog, like a swipe for your dog or something, or a Tinder for your dog. That's cool. And somebody has really hacked this thing because there's no way you could like that many. So yeah, like this kind of stuff would be a great first project if you had something where you wanted to do a leaderboard of your favorite dog. I mean, this is something great to get inspired by and to even potentially borrow things from. I'm going to include a bunch of links in the about section for this video, and I'll also send out a quick newsletter update with a link to this video, and I'll include those same links in the newsletter. So that pretty much wraps it up for this week. Don't hesitate to message me, reach out on Twitter. I'm just Nick Fogel on Twitter. You can also just message me in the comments, although YouTube comments make me nervous. And then you could also respond to the newsletter. So yeah, it's almost 1 a.m. Friday night, so I'm going to wrap it up here. But try to go more in depth with some of the code next week, and you'll also see kind of the first stages of my project. So look forward to that. I hope everybody's able to find a project. Let's really try to nail down a project or a project idea by next week, and start to get rolling on some of these concepts we've talked about. I've already had a few people reach out saying they've already got something they're starting on, which is awesome. And I would love the chance to demo people's projects or businesses as we get closer to the end of this. So yeah, thanks for listening in, and reach out if you have any questions.